Hello, and welcome to the Gaia update for the full moon in Pisces that happens on September 2nd, 2020. I'm Adrienne Elise. So, we have a lot going on for this Pisces full moon, and it does seem to be quite a turning point in this whole story of 2020. So the energy of this full moon is very sweet and supportive in dreaming something new, imagining something different, looking beyond the veil of the Maya, of the lies, of the delusions, of the distortions, of the fear that's been thrown at us throughout this year of 2020 and, of course, for thousands of years. So quite a turning point here. Perhaps for those of us who are ready to step out of these delusions. Now, because the full moon in Pisces will be in a sextile relationship to Uranus, because this full moon happens at 10 degrees. Uranus is still at 10 degrees Taurus. So the full moon 10 degrees Pisces and Uranus at 10 degrees Taurus. And this is saying Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius and speaks to the future. It speaks to a connection to a higher part of ourselves, to ancient wisdom, future technology, vibrational energy. It's the awakener. And so with this full moon in Pisces, which is about dreaming and imagination, but also the delusions we've gotten stuck in, spiritual revelation, connection to something bigger and greater than this little tiny reality we're living here. And so together these influences are like, you guys, just this step out of the Maya, like step out of this ego-based delusion reality. There's a lot coming up right now, subconscious programming and fears around spiritual ascension and awakening that says that you'll just completely leave this planet. You won't have a body. You won't be able to have connection with people and your human people in your life and this human existence and have your job and have your house and just live. And it's like, that's not true. We step over in this particular ascension that we're doing here on Earth. Why it's taken so long is because we're doing it in our physical body with our full consciousness of what's happening. So you can move over into higher dimensional realities and still, it'll be different, and it might be a little weird, and that might be what's happening with your relationships and this feeling of isolation. Really powerful energies of lack, emptiness, isolation, totally alone. That's kind of evidence that you're making the move, because the people around you aren't on that vibration, and so it feels like you're all alone on an island. That seems to be a necessary point of this whole process we're in, because you have to empty in order to fill with who you really are. And the whole definition of supernova soul is that you've had lots and lots of experiences, full evolutionary experiences where you went through spiritual ascension, and you're here on Earth to lead the way and hold space for this experience. And so there's this huge, bigger part of you that you don't even know. You have a sense of it. You felt this lack, you felt this loss, like there's a bigger thing you're supposed to do, that your life has no meaning and purpose, and you're here for something really big. And the people around you say, well, that's egotistical. Who do you think you are? God. And it's like, well, yeah, we're incarnating our particle of God, our higher self that hasn't been able to fully arrive here. Now the energies are appropriate. And that's kind of what this full moon is saying. It's like, okay, and it's not like, another delusion or thing with a spiritual ascension programming says we all have to go together, and we will make a critical mass, and then the whole reality will, but we're here to lead the way, and we don't need to wait for anybody or anything, and we can just step over into these higher frequency realities, and our life will change, of course, and probably dramatically, but at the same time, you're not losing your body, you're not losing, you're still, it's like we have these multiple options of dimensional reality that people are living all the time. And especially supernova souls, part of your gifts, your star power is to be able to exist in multiple dimensional frequencies. How fun, right? And then you're like, who the heck am I? Where am I? What am I doing? Right? And that's kind of what 2020 is about. It's like a complete derangement in order to get back to a better arrangement. right? Or an arrangement that can support this bigger self of yours coming in and landing home. So it seems that this isolation, this lack, this emptiness, like everything leaving your life, the tide going out, it's making room for that bigger self, for that God self, for this spiritual revelation. You reaping the benefits of the cup you've given again and again and again, what you've brought to earth again and again and again, with your healing, with your love, with your light, wasn't so well received. But that doesn't mean that you can't receive now the entirety of all you've given here on earth. And what if this bucket of blessings wants to wash into your life and bring joy beyond what you can imagine, not because of something? See, we're in this conditional based reality. It's like, oh, I can be happy now because this thing is happening. And it's like, no, this is joy sprouting up for no reason, just because you're being more true to who you are and you feel better. But then we talked about the closer as you inch up and you have that intention, and you might not even know what you're doing, but the energetic forces will be like, they don't want you to go to, so it's like everything seems to come out of the woodwork and kind of slime you back into those lower dimensional frequencies, right? And that's more evidence that you're doing it right. And how long do we have to stay in the mudslide, right? And this full moon is saying, hey, it's right here. That you don't have to work, you don't have to pray, you don't have to, there's nothing required. Of course, there's always these things that can support us along the journey, and having a spiritual practice and making room for it in our life and being present with this. But we are getting in this, it's almost like the paradigm, the lower Maya paradigm itself is holding us back by just the belief system that it has to be really hard, And of course, that's going to come up when you have this fear programming come up as well. The fear programming that says you're going to explode into pieces, you're no longer going to exist, you won't have a body, you won't have any friends, you'll be out there floating alone in the universe, have fun with that spiritual ascension. And that's not true at all. It's heaven on earth, right here, right now, and you can be there. That's what this full moon is saying. Now the gates are open. We've reached a point where you can be in heaven on earth, in the kingdom, right here, And so the moon in sextiles to Uranus is this, Uranus is this new frequency vibration. It's about new earth. How are we going to build it? It's changing our relationship to wealth, our financial systems, our relationship to matter itself, physical form. And so that sextile is very supportive. It's about creative solutions, and the moon in Pisces is like this emotional attachment to everything we've known, and then those delusions and what we keep playing out, those old patterns, but then seeing through the veil to this spiritual revelation. This seems to be a piece that is what's missing. And chart after chart, I'm seeing that the way things are lining up astrologically for the supernova soul is, or how it's, what it means for the supernova soul is like this opportunity for spiritual revelation. And that maybe that's what you're making room for in your life with all this lack and everything leaving, because you've set an intention of a more meaningful existence, And then it's like people are having experiences, and I've seen through this year and the next year and then a couple years ahead, this is a big part of it. It's like we're revisiting the beginning of the Piscean age, where it was spiritual revelation that started that whole story. And it's like we've got to get back to that gift before we can exit the Piscean age and move into the Aquarian age. So when you're empty and you're lost and you have nothing, you feel like everything's washed away, that's when you're ripe for spiritual revelation, right? And then you're like, sometimes you can have interactions in your life where you're like with somebody who is on a different path, and they're like, oh, everything's just working out for me and it's no big deal, and I'm just living my life. And it's like, and then you might be like, thank God for what I've gone through, because I am living a real authentic experience. And I don't want to go live a ego-based materialistic life where everything is just there. I mean, everything will be there, your cup of God, but it's so much more full than this Maya, cup. It's like, that's going to break and it's empty and you can't take that shit with you. And so it's like, we have to be open. And so this is part of the spiritual revelation, because you have an experience where you're like, just takes a moment and you're having like something, nature's talking to you, God's talking to you, the angels are talking to you, your higher self is talking to you, and you're like, oh. And then you're so filled with so much authentic gratitude for all you've had to go through, because you're here for that. You're not here to have your life work out perfectly according to what corporate, America wants it to be. It hasn't been an easy road, but it's like at some point the law of the universe says all those blessings that you've been giving have to come back, except for if you can't receive. So this is the energy of the Venus at the last degrees of Cancer for this full moon. Venus is opposing Pluto leading up to this full moon, and that comes off it's at the very end of that on this full moon day. So very powerful. Venus, who's just gone through this very traumatic experience of because Venus is all about your value system, what you really want, what you care about. And in Gemini, it just got that derangement, right? Just so deranged and so confused about. But now Pluto is saying, okay, we sorted out what isn't meaningful and what isn't purposeful. And that's Capricorn, right? So Capricorn can be heavy, it can be intense, it can be facing these rules and laws and obstacles, but it's also about kicking out the door what doesn't suit you anymore, It's just sorting through, and especially with the Sun and Mercury and Virgo, right? That's clearing the wheat from the chaff, taking the meaningful and letting go of the rest. And that's what this Venus opposite Pluto energy is about. It's okay, get it out of here then. Clean up, clean your life, clean your stuff. Use organization. For Virgo, it's a really great energy to use organization and clearing, and this is also can be for your thoughts. It's ruled by Mercury, and to clean house and get rid of those things that aren't serving you anymore. And that's exactly what we've been doing for years. But, now we're going to do it more deliberately, and we're on board with it rather than a victim of it. That's kind of the shift I'm seeing for this full moon. And now, speaking of Mercury, leading up to this full moon, Mercury is in square to Neptune. And that's bringing all this up, opportunities for mystical spiritual revelation, and also facing the delusions that we've been living by, right? Maybe the delusion that the people around us really actually were supporting us, or the delusion that are the structures, the job we've been working for all these years was something that was on your path or something like that, and it's just facing these, sorting out, we're sorting out the messes and facing the delusion so that the dream can come in, right? And so it all is saying the same thing. And so that's the energy leading up to this full moon. And then right after this full moon, we're leading into this energy of Mercury coming into square with the nodes. Okay. And we also have the South Node still on the Galactic Center. And so Mercury squaring up with the nodes is saying, the nodes are always about past and future and timelines and where are we going, right? Because the nodes of the moon is where the Earth, the elliptical orbit of Earth and the elliptical orbit of the moon intersect, right? And it's crossroads, timelines, past, future, new directions. And so Mercury squaring up with the nodes is saying, all right, where are we going from here? Which path are you going to choose? Are you going to stay in Maya? Because we've been talking about this, about how we've had time where we could kind of be a little of this, a little of that, a little of our star power, a little of the regular old thing. And it's it's just getting so uncomfortable. We can't do it anymore. And yet, can you step into that bigger star power? Just saying it makes me feel sick to my stomach, right? So much programmed fear about this bigger part of who you are and what you know, that you've decided to cut yourself off from it completely for lifetimes. And now in one lifetime, you're going to undo all that karma, all those karmic relationships that have kept you, been about controlling you, and take your power back and fully come into your full expression of who you are. It's a lot. I see it chart after chart in astrology charts, though, of these supernova souls. And so Mercury squaring the nodes to say, okay, boom, turn the corner, get on the right timeline, enough of this and that, a little of this, a little of that, and you can whitewash it, make it work. And that's an interesting thing about this whole system of astrology, numerology, like everything that we're trying to study and try to get some clue of what we're doing here. You know, it's like the mystery is that a lot of times it seems like, well, okay, so say you're on the cusp of a sign, or your sun, you know, in your chart is on the cusp, right? So you're like, well, I'm a little of this and a little of that, and it doesn't really work that way. And this is where we are. We're on the cusp, you know, the Piscean age and the Aquarian age. But you can't actually do both because the signs are incredibly different, right? That's this whole pattern that we're working with. The houses, they line up with the signs, you know, and that's numerology. And it's like, you know, the sign of Aries is fire and hot and grab it and action and the warrior, right? And then Taurus, earth and soft and values and what you love and feeling cared for, right? So it's like very different energies. And we're coming to that place where you gotta make that turn. And so this is what Mercury square the nodes is saying to us. But there's also this thing of like, you don't have to do it right now if you're not ready, but you can also do it anytime you want now. Now the energies can support you when you want to make that leap. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting from this full moon. Let me know what you think. And the other thing that's happening just on the heels, starting right with this full moon, is Venus square Mars. Wow, because Venus has been, you know, opposing Pluto and Jupiter, and Mars has been squaring Pluto and Jupiter. And this whole month of August, just really intense energies of tension. And then now Venus and Mars coming into a square. So it's like... when Venus and Mars square, it's kind of like trying to overcome opposites, you know? It's kind of like how our world, there's an agenda to take gender away from us, right? Like, oh, male, female, you know, whatever, you're somewhere in between. And it's just like these signs. It's like, no. The male energies and the female energies and the archetypes and the understanding of the deep mysteries of these, that's how we get out of duality. So if the agenda to take away gender is a spiritual agenda to keep us, because think about it. Would you rather have male, female, and like a mysterious understanding of these, or would you rather have ones and zeros? The taking away of our gender is because computers don't have a gender, right? And so Mars and square Venus, though, it's about working together, the opposites, using the opposites to turn that corner. You know, using the understanding of these archetypes to step through into, because ultimately the brain, you know, is a energy. Our consciousness in the brain is duality consciousness. If you take the brain out of the body, it falls into two pieces. And we're trying to get into our heart consciousness. And that's exactly why we need these gender archetypes and understanding of these vibrational energies, because that's what gets us into heart consciousness, the oneness, right? We don't get to oneness by throwing out gender. We work with those energies, you know? And so Venus square Mars is a alchemical energy because it's coming right at this moment. After all these squares and oppositions with these big Capricorn players about breaking down and getting rid of what's no longer serving us. You know, you got a pile of broken stuff in the garage that you haven't known what to do with. You got to get rid of it, you know? And so this Venus square Mars happens just after this full moon, but we'll be feeling it for the full moon. And it's like Venus at the end degrees of Cancer, she's feeling sensitive, she's feeling grief, she's feeling regret, she's feeling unloved, she's feeling like, what do I need to do around here to be cared for? Because how do I even, it's like, yes, maybe I have this bigger spiritual destiny, but she's just feeling lost and alone, you know, in this void. And then Mars in Aries is saying, that's because you haven't been, you've been playing a game. You've been pretending you're something you're not. As Mars in Aries is that fight, the warrior for the true self. So it's an empowerment energy to the feminine, saying, come on, get out of the mud, get out of the, just, enough wallowing. Let's get out of the Piscean age, and take the spiritual revelation gift of it with us. So really interesting energies there. And after this full moon, just a few days, on the 5th, Mercury goes into Libra and Venus goes into Leo. So a big shift of energy. And that's kind of where there's a turning corner here, because Venus moving into Leo is like, if she can breathe again. The exalted goddess coming back out from the rainy, dark night into the light again, and recognizing, validating the work that has happened on this level of value system and direction and self-worth for 2020, starting way back in March, these energies started. So it's like, we're finally turning the corner on that Venus retrograde and can get some perspective, come into the light and kind of be like, whew, good work. Okay. Whew. All right. Now on to the next chapter. Now Mercury, on the other hand, moving into Libra, Mercury will be taking a retrograde, not till the end degrees of Libra. So it'll go down into Libra, and it makes a square with Saturn at the end, kind of right before it takes a retrograde. Or I think it retrogrades back to that. So it'll go into Scorpio, retrograde back into Libra, and a lot of transits, squares up with Saturn. So Mercury moving into Libra is like coming up on another, retrograde energy. And the squares, right? We talked about the season, like Venus opposing, and then Venus will go to Libra and square later when we get into the Mars retrograde, and Mercury in this square up to Saturn. So all of our personal planets are on board, and it's getting personal, right? It's like, we can't sit here and just watch the movie of this time and be like, oh, it's a shift of ages. Let's get some popcorn. Let's see what happens. Like, what? There's something required. And it's like, what's required is that deck, that new ship, that new path, that stage, perhaps. It's time to step up. And so maybe that's Venus and Leo. It's like, okay, what have you learned? What have you done? What do you have to offer from all that you've gone through in this treacherous, rather traumatic Earth evolution for the light worker, right? Now, take all of that and put it with this moon in sextile to Uranus, which means the sun in Virgo is in trine to Uranus, right? And it's like, because full moons are oppositions, right? It's like the moon is exactly opposite the sun, and that's what makes the fullness. They're exactly opposite at 10 degrees. And then, but a sextile trine with Uranus at 10 degrees, it's like, ooh, jimmying the lock, right? We're like working it. And then we've got Mercury square the nodes. New direction, new path, new energy, and then of course that always involves examining what's holding us back from the past. And so Mercury in square to the nodes, but that includes the south node on the Galactic Center. And that south node on the Galactic Center is regrets and grief from where you feel like you didn't fulfill your mission on Earth. And such a huge, maybe part of the spiritual revelation is that you were only doing a little piece of it. And you fully succeeded, and the seed was planted, and now we get to go back and sprout those seeds and grow those projects and actually build the city of light that you thought you were building. But then we had to go into the darkness because we're doing this spiritual ascension consciously in a body, right? And that's why it's like, it's this free will energy where everybody has to decide, except for you guys, because you already decided the only reason you ever came to Earth evolution was for this, right? So, this is this massive turning point. So here we have this like, whoa, a little crack in the matrix, the bigger picture of what you've been going through, your opportunity to turn that corner, step on that more true path, incarnate this bigger self and see through the veil and receive this spiritual revelation. And then a few days after, we've had those big shifts, Mercury into Libra, Venus into Leo, and then Mars turns retrograde on the 9th. So it's like, just the whole energy of this year, right? It's like, oh, here it is. It's right there. It's right there. It's right there. And then, you know, because we've got to work through the fear programming. We got to work through the belief systems, the delusions, the fear of losing, you know, connection to human connection, and all of these things that are coming up. And the Mars retrograde is actually a beautiful gift. I'm seeing it more and more for the supernova soul. It's just like, this is how you break down all of your life that's based on the false you. And now it's time for the true you. And the warrior is here for you. The warrior of light, the Mars exalted divine masculine, right? Coming in and saying, we can do this. You know, hold yourself in this container, hold your vibration, honor, and be willing to fight for the good that you are, and the right and the true that has never been received in this world. And so this Pisces full moon is just like, it's like everything in a little moment. So I hope you'll consider joining me for a live activation. This is going to happen 12 hours before the actual full moon at 11 a.m. on the 1st, September 1st. So that's Tuesday, September 1st, 11 a.m. Mountain Time in the U.S. And it's $10. I hope you'll consider joining for this live activation. The information to sign up is in the box below. If you can't make the live time in your time zone or for whatever reason, just know that if you sign up, your intention is there to join, and your messages can come through for you. Your questions can get answered when you go back and listen to the replay. This is, we're working in a quantum field here, so it's not dependent on having to be there at that right time. You can get those messages whenever you can get them. And this is how we're working as a group too. You know, a lot of this energy of this Pisces trying to pull us out of the Maya and into the dream is about starting to really be intentional and present with the work we're doing as a soul group on the astral plane, and how important it is for us to let those connections be real and valid and supported and intentional, and because that's the next phase. You know, the next phase is we're coming together in person, we're finding each other, we're establishing the city of light, just 2 or more, and you can get this city of light established with these supernova souls, and the magic that comes from that, you know. And then as we grow into more being able to get together in person, but right now we're doing this, you know, the way you prepare for this true spiritual community to come into your life and your spiritual partner and all that is by opening up to communication on the astral plane, the reality. So part of this Pisces full moon is let yourself imagine a new reality, like, you know, let yourself be, what would it be like? You know, vibrationally get in tune with the feeling, you know, of true soul family showing up in your life. Yeah. And it's such an amazing, I'm seeing it happen, right? From my perspective, I'm starting to see these connections happen. And it is the power that we have. No wonder there's so much that keeps us apart, right? So this is where we start dreaming and imagining and allowing, like, what would it feel like? And I'm going to say, what I'm being shown now is all that you're trying to bring in and what you would like and imagine, but are you good enough? Do you deserve it? Is it possible? All that. It's like, it's beyond what you can imagine. It's beyond the joyful feelings that come not for any reason, but just because that's who you are. You know, but we're mechanically being held down by so much programming and our technology and our fluoride in our water and the GMOs and the chemtrails and all of it, you know, to keep us from this pure spiritual joy. And you're here to be that cup of God and lead the way. So a little glimpse of that with this Pisces full moon. So I hope that you'll consider joining me for that live activation, or energetically. If you can't join at all, just, being present at the time of the full moon and of the activation, you can connect in with your soul group and just get that vibrational support that we need to turn this corner together. So, and that's kind of energy. As I say that, I kind of feel like you can't do it alone, And supernova souls are so programmed to be like, well, I got to do it alone. It's the only way. And it's like, well, we have to go to that place, of the wilderness alone and slay our dragon alone. But ultimately, the work we're here to do, we've got to come together. It's an inevitable reality, not a pipe dream. So, that's what this full moon's all about. So I look forward to seeing you there at the live activation or the next update. Until then, I'm Adrienne Elise. Namaste.